"Why are you avoiding me?" I asked, cutting across the hallway to block his path. My mind was spinning. His sudden, icy shift felt like a physical slap. "I made a personal choice not to interact with total strangers," he responded, his tone dead and hollow. I stood there, paralyzed. The raw arrogance in his voice felt like a hammer crashing into my chest. I slowly nodded, realizing there was no breaking through that wall today. "Fine. I guess I'll just pack up and move out of my mom's old place then. Because it's clear this entire household has decided to treat me like I'm completely invisible. It's incredibly frustrating and humiliating, isn't it?" he added, flashing a fake, plastic wave of sympathy. Look, I fully expected this toxic, backstabbing cruelty from my mother-in-law, but watching my father-in-law flip the script like this, it caught me completely off guard. "It's deeply unsettling," I muttered, staring directly into his checked-out eyes. "There has to be a dark, calculated reason for this sudden shift, and I am willing to bet everything it has something to do with my sister-in-law, Harper. Ever since she crawled back into this house, our entire existence has been thrown into absolute chaos. Don't you dare expect me to look back or regret walking out," I said, my voice hardening. "You think I'll regret this? Think again, you ungrateful jerk." Years of suppressed bitterness were creeping into every single syllable. I packed my entire life into a couple of duffel bags and walked out of that suburban palace of lies. And within just 3 days of my departure, their perfect, proud house descended into a financial nightmare they never saw coming. Thinking back to the day I first met my wife, Chloe, those untainted memories came rushing back like a flood. We met through a high-profile corporate account we were both handling. She was a senior sales representative, and she frequently visited my consulting firm for strategy. As we spent more time talking after those long, exhausting afternoon meetings, I found myself deeply drawn to her incredibly caring nature and her quiet, distinct charm. I wasn't some conventionally handsome model, nor did I come from old money, but my raw honesty and work ethic stood out to her in a room full of corporate sharks. Even though she was incredibly popular, she chose me, and we officially started dating. Our conversations quickly shifted past professional boundaries, and she shared her family's high expectations. Having lost both of my parents in a fatal car crash when I was just a little kid, I grew up bouncing around the brutal foster care system, a past that entirely shaped my survival instinct. Once our relationship got serious, I sat her down and laid bare every painful detail of my upbringing. "That must have been so incredibly tough on you," she whispered, squeezing my hand with full emotional support. Not long after that, I proposed, expressing my deepest desire to build a real, stable home together. I was eager to experience what a real family felt like, so she quickly introduced me to her parents. At our very first dinner, I openly told them about growing up without a family in the system. They listened with nodding heads and deep understanding, assuring me my past wouldn't dictate our future together. Their superficial acceptance brought me a joy I hadn't felt in years, though my sister-in-law Harper's initial reaction to my background lingered like a poison in my mind. "Wait, so you actually grew up as a state foster kid? Wow, crazy," she asked, looking completely disgusted. She was fiercely protective of her sister, so I brushed off the toxic remark as simple elite curiosity, completely unaware that it was a massive red flag indicating a much deeper, dark tension. Before our wedding, we discussed our living arrangements. While staying temporarily at her parents' massive estate was an option, I couldn't risk commuting away from my corporate job. Thankfully, my senior marketing manager approved a long-term remote work arrangement for Chloe. I considered moving with her, but my career and immediate financial responsibilities kept me grounded in the city. We decided she would transition to remote work after the wedding while I handled the local logistics. I was looking forward to our new life as a married couple, planning out our weekend visits. Though the thought of living under the same roof as my elitist in-laws was daunting, I craved the sense of belonging. At first, everything in the suburban household seemed to be moving smoothly, but things took a sharp turn when my father-in-law approached me with a staggering revelation. This marked the absolute beginning of the psychological warfare in our seemingly perfect setup. When my mother-in-law went out on an expensive weekend shopping spree, he seized the chance for a private talk. Looking at his pale face, I asked, "Mr. Vance, what is going on with you? Is everything okay?" With heavy hesitation and fear in his voice, he confessed, "Ethan, I've decided to take a forced leave from work." "A medical leave?" I repeated, trying to piece together his obvious anxiety. He explained that brutal corporate politics and his rapidly declining physical health were crushing him. Seeing his exhausted state, I couldn't help but wonder why my mother-in-law didn't notice his suffering. Her superficial nature and obsessive need to maintain a high society status always overshadowed her empathy. I highly suspected that her hypercritical attitude only made his health condition 10 times worse. Instead of offering him an ounce of comfort, she was always the first to publicly criticize his dropping income. My father-in-law had likely pushed through his severe illness for months, ignoring the signs, until it worsened to the point where he was secretly sneaking off to the hospital for emergency therapy. Mentally and physically depleted, he was facing immediate termination due to his frequent absences. Corporate whispers about forcing him out were circulating, and he was terrified of his wife's reaction. He literally feared her narcissistic rage at the mere thought of him taking a single day off. On top of that, their lavish lifestyle relied entirely on his massive executive overtime bonuses, making the reality of a medical break a total financial catastrophe for their credit score. "If I tell my wife, she will strip me of everything and walk out on this marriage," he confessed, weeping. That was the exact reason he turned to me, the foster kid they looked down on, for desperate help. "If she finds out I'm failing financially, my status in this country club is over," he sobbed. His desperation resonated with the boy inside me, who knew what it felt like to have no safety net. Remembering their initial acceptance, I decided to privately carry his burden during this dark time. "I understand, Mr. Vance. I will secretly wire money to your private checking account every single month to cover the mortgage and bills. I am truly, deeply sorry to put this on you, Ethan. I'll get better soon and fix this," he promised me. From that afternoon on, my father-in-law continued to put on his suit every morning, pretending to drive to work, while I was secretly funding their entire upscale lifestyle. My mother-in-law, blissfully ignorant and only caring about her credit limit, never noticed the source of the money, unknowingly burning through my funds while he secretly hid in the bank's final foreclosure notices from me. Meanwhile, he attended intense physical therapy sessions, taking long walks in the upstate mountains to clear his mind. Gradually, his health began to stabilize, and I held on to the hope that he would return to his executive role soon. But a massive, toxic bombshell completely shattered our quiet arrangement. After a catastrophic, explosive blowout fight with her husband, Harper decided to move back into her parents' estate. "I'm losing my mind living with that idiot. I'm staying here indefinitely. Make sure dinner is ready for me too, Ethan," she ordered the second she walked in. From day one, I felt Harper's visceral, elitist disgust toward my very existence. Our very first family Thanksgiving, her mocking attitude was so loud that Chloe was left visibly crying in the kitchen. Even during our wedding reception, her bitter, sour expression spoke volumes, and she made a vile remark right to my face. "My sister looks stunning, but honestly, she could have married old money. A foster kid is just embarrassing for our lineage," she sneered. But since she had moved away after her own marriage, I expected minimal contact and thought I could tolerate the tension. If I had known she would turn this house into a psychological war zone, I would have pulled my money out on day one. She treated her own father like garbage, but I assumed her toxic behavior was temporary due to her pending divorce. I mistakenly trusted my mother-in-law's initial grace, never expecting the absolute betrayal that was brewing. One evening after a brutal shift at the office, my mother-in-law sat in the living room, completely cold and distant. "Is everything okay, Mrs. Vance?" I asked, sensing the thick, heavy tension in the air. She completely avoided eye contact, and when I pressed further, she turned on me like a snake. "Did you really think you could trash-talk my family to our neighbors and think we wouldn't find out?" I was completely stunned. I have never said a single negative word about this family. Your acceptance meant the world to me. You've been playing the perfect, humble son-in-law while secretly slandering my name to the homeowners association, she retorted. Frustrated, my jaw tightened and I snapped. Fine, believe whatever twisted lies you want to believe. Harper smirked from the kitchen counter. Looks like the charity case isn't so perfect after all, Mom. Look at him, his true, gutter-born. Nature is finally showing. Once a foster kid, always a foster kid, right? I stood my ground, my voice deadly calm. I don't gossip. I haven't said anything to anyone. Oh, but the country club members heard completely otherwise, she countered with a smug laugh. The moment I got back into town, they told me all about your constant complaints regarding our lifestyle. I look her dead in the eye. Which neighbors, Harper? Give me one single name. I don't owe you an explanation, and I don't remember their names anyway, she shrugged, completely indifferent. The sick, calculated manipulation coming from my sister-in-law left me completely nauseous. As I walked home the next afternoon with a bleeding heart, I wondered what new horror they had orchestrated. When I arrived, the three of them were casually eating expensive takeout sushi, laughing as if I didn't exist. By now, I was entirely numb to their psychological warfare. But as I casually glanced out the hallway window toward the pouring rain in the garden, my heart stopped. My tailored corporate suits, my expensive leatherwork shoes, and my childhood journals, the only connection left to my late parents, were scattered all over the muddy grass, completely ruined by the storm. My things! What the hell did you do to my things? I cried out, my voice cracking with pure rage. My mother-in-law didn't even bother to look up from her plate, completely ignoring my existence. Why won't you say anything to me? Look at me, I demanded, slamming my fist onto the counter. I told you, I do not converse with street trash who aren't part of our bloodline, she finally hissed, turning her back. Harper let out a mocking laugh, deeply enjoying the sight of my absolute humiliation. And where the hell are you on this? I screamed, turning directly to my father-in-law, Mr. Vance. I was the one keeping him afloat, throwing my hard-earned life savings into his account while he hid like a coward. I had single-handedly saved their entire reputation out of pure gratitude, and he couldn't even stand up for me? Seeing him look away in total, pathetic silence completely disillusioned me. I grabbed my car keys, walked out into the freezing downpour, and drove straight to Chloe's remote apartment upstate to escape this hell. During that entire, agonizing 3-hour drive, I kept completely silent, letting the anger fuel me. I knew for a fact my mother-in-law hadn't informed Chloe about Harper's toxic return or what they did to me. If my wife had known her mother threw my life into the mud, she would have called me instantly. Though I knew our dynamic with her parents was severely strained, I kept Chloe insulated from their venom. My heart sank when I arrived at her apartment to find her still caught up in a late-night corporate Zoom call. I waited in the dark, and the second she closed her laptop and saw me, she flashed a massive, beautiful smile. Ethan, oh my God, what a surprise. Seeing you completely made my week. Her genuine warmth shattered my emotional wall. The sheer joy of seeing her, mixed with the agonizing trauma of how her family had just discarded me, made me break down. I openly cried as I told her about their systemic abuse and how they threw my dead parents' memories into the rain. Through my tears, I made it legally clear I would never set foot in that house again, and if she sided with them, I was ready for a divorce. Chloe was completely horrified, weeping as she realized the monstrous lengths her mother and sister had gone to. You don't ever need to apologize to me, Ethan, she whispered, her voice shaking with intense anger toward her family. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. Thankfully, her corporate sales job allowed her to work entirely from home, only needing to drop by the city office twice a month. We hadn't yet experienced what it felt like to live as a real, peaceful married couple because I was busy protecting her family. But now we could finally cut the cord and build the clean, successful life we had always imagined together. That very night, I finally came clean and admitted that I'd been entirely covering her parents' heavy bills. Why didn't you tell me you were privately wiring thousands to my dad's account? She asked in complete shock. Because your father begged me to protect his fragile pride from your mother, so I kept it quiet, I explained. And exactly 3 days later, my mother-in-law's frantic name flashed on my phone screen. Her arrogant tone was completely gone, replaced by pure terror. Ethan, the house is a complete disaster. The bills are bouncing, and there's no money left in the primary checking account. As Chloe's husband, it is your duty to get back here right now, handle the finances, and wire the emergency funds immediately, she demanded. How incredibly heartless and delusional are you? I said, letting out a cold, sharp laugh into the microphone. I do not regret helping your husband when he was down, but I am done playing your savior. Enjoy your empty house. When they tried to bypass me and aggressively spam Chloe's phone, I took the call and delivered the final blow. I will never forgive you for how you treated my past, and I am never sending my wife back into your toxic house. I am completely cutting off the financial life support. You're no longer family to me. You're completely on your own. Stay away from my wife, or my corporate lawyers will ensure you regret the very day you threw my property into the mud. My sister-in-law Harper, who thought her parents were independently wealthy, and my mother-in-law were left in total, paralyzed shock. The absolute horror set in when they realized the state foster charity case was the only reason they weren't sleeping in a shelter. A few hours later, my father-in-law secretly reached out again, desperately begging for one last financial wire transfer to save them. He confessed that the bank was officially initiating a foreclosure because he had mismanaged my monthly transfers to fund his wife's shopping sprees instead of paying the actual bank debt. I put the call on speaker, letting Chloe hear the full, pathetic hypocrisy of her father's desperate begging. Chloe took the phone from my hand, her voice freezing cold. Let the bank take the keys, Dad. Report them to the authorities, Ethan. My corporate colleagues and managing partners fully back my decision, expressing absolute disgust at what I had endured. Focus 100% on your expansion and remote strategy, Ethan, they advised, securing my corporate standing. Meanwhile, without my massive monthly transfers, the crushing financial pressure caused my father-in-law's health to fully collapse. He was forced to officially resign from his position, and their country club reputation was completely shattered in front of the entire neighborhood. Harper tried to desperately crawl back to her ex-husband's wealthy family, but they flatly rejected her after learning about her toxic history. And that night, as I stood by the glass window of our beautiful new high-rise apartment, I realized I could finally breathe. The boy inside me, who spent 33 years trying to buy the love of a family through hard work and silence, was finally dead. For the first time in my entire life, I chose my own self-respect, and I chose my wife, Chloe. I left their pathetic suburban palace of paper to burn down under the weight of their own disgusting pride. My real home was sitting right next to me, safe, warm, and entirely ours. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Stay tuned.